Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Hello. I thought it might be interesting to talk about books while I do a house chore, and that house chore is putting my clothes away. So we're killing two birds with one stone. We're being productive and we're talking about something important. So this video is about my experience reading nothing but TikTok smut for literally 6 months. Since joining TikTok, I have joined obviously the BookTok community, which is fantastic. I've been able to make a book club with some close friends out of it. I've actually made friends out of it as well. We're called BookTok Book Club on Instagram and TikTok. If you want to just check us out, we're Australian as well. But another trend on TikTok, or BookTok I should say, is smut or spicy romance, that kind of thing. It's taken off. The first book that was recommended to me in this smut universe was none other than Den of Vipers, which I think we're all pretty familiar with. So Den of Vipers is a reverse harem, which I did not know what that meant until that book. I had lived in a bubble of innocence before this moment. But these vipers, their names are as listed: Ryder, Garrett, Kenzo and Diesel. Each of them have some sort of kink. They're all alpha male, they're all white, and they are all fit as a fiddle. Can't have any blemishes on these kinds of characters, of course. And the main girl involved is Roxy, who is absolutely stunning. Stunningly beautiful. Anyway, the story kicks off with them kidnapping Roxy for some sort of like petty revenge or whatever in a bar. And then the story doesn't end. Well, more to the point, the story never starts, because that is the story. Apart from that, they just have wild, smutty times. There's no story. She gets with all of them, which is the whole point of a reverse harem novel. And they have various different kinks involved. They're brothers, which is weird. But I actually don't know if they're actually blood brothers. That was something I just didn't really read about. I just skimmed over it. I read this book thinking that perhaps there was some merit to the obsession with the book. That was like, oh my god, this book is amazing. No, it's only amazing because it's like filling that need, I guess, in a fantasy that some women have with being with multiple men. So I think, you know, obviously the prose was not there. The pacing was not there, because this was a book that was meant for one purpose only, and that purpose was to be pornographic. And I didn't give this a star rating because there is no star rating for me. But I always think of these books in a way of like, I really hope that the author made money out of this, or some sort of like merit out of this. I hope that the people that read this book who did enjoy it went and reviewed that book on Goodreads or Amazon, so that she could maybe start to build a profile for herself if that is the chosen genre that she wants to write in. And I just hope that, you know, people actually went and bought the book, because I know that she is an independent author. She's indie published, not traditionally published, which means that she's paying for everything herself. Editor, which I don't really think she probably had, but the cover art, illustration, writing time, all of that. So I just hope that people actually went and bought the novel and didn't seek it out by illegal means, which, I mean, it's TikTok. They're probably going to seek it out by illegal means. That's a whole nother kind of story in itself about how I feel about that, because it's a really conflicting thing for me, because I think everyone should have access to literature, but I also think that authors should be able to afford to write literature. So did I enjoy it? No, absolutely not. I thought it was horrifyingly bad. Do I think other people would enjoy it? Yeah, I think so. Like if you're into that, then that might be something that you like. The next really popular book that I read, which surprisingly I didn't mind, was Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. So they basically follows a story of these girls. The main girl's Georgie, and then there's 7 of them stranded on this ship. They get kidnapped by aliens that aren't the barbarians. These aliens, they speak a different language, so they can't really understand what's going on. They're in a really disgusting room. They don't eat well. Obviously, they just eat these weird cube things, these pills, and they shit in a bucket, and they're told to shut up. Basically, it's actually quite a triggering and scary situation, because there is a little bit of sexual assault involved as well, so just be aware of that. Anyway, they land on a planet that they dub Not Hoth, which is a reference to Star Wars, for any Star Wars fans out there. And Not Hoth is like a desolate landscape that's just ice, full of snow, etc. There's creatures, it's a different planet. You know, there's enemy kind of, what do you call them, like predatory creatures. Different fauna, different flora, that kind of thing, although nothing really grows. And so Georgie decides to venture out on her own and try and find some sort of help. So the remaining girls stay in the ship. So immediately the main character is split up from the rest of the group, which, I mean, wouldn't happen. I don't think. I think you'd send someone to scout, but I think you'd send 2 people just in case something happened to the first, and so the other one could come back. I mean, that would be my logic anyway. However, it is fictional. So she is then captured in this trap that pulls her upside down, and we meet our first Ice Planet barbarian, whose name is Vectral, and he's actually really nice. He treats her well. I mean, there's a bit of weird stuff at the start that happens between them, but apart from that, I think he genuinely cares about her. There's a really strange kind of breeding kink in this book though, that like the barbarians are excited that there's these human girls on the planet who can potentially be their mates, but you know, nonetheless, like they, you know, the story unfolds, they can't speak to each other, which is quite interesting because obviously, you know, they're different creatures, and then that problem is solved very, very fast. The author made a scapegoat to that conflict, so that kind of just like fizzled out. In saying that though, I did then go ahead and purchase the second novel out of curiosity, because like I said, I didn't mind it, and it was the same story over again. It was literally the same plot with just different characters, but even the characters were the same. It was just like that typical like alpha protective male and like a meek submissive kind of girl, although she wasn't that submissive, she's kind of annoying, to be honest. So I just DNF'd that, did not finish. But overall, I actually really enjoyed the first book of Ice Planet Barbarians. I was quite surprised. Like this thing that they have to have as well, like it's like this worm thing that lives inside them called the coon. I think it's called the coon. Like one of the girls calls it coochie or something. And that's how they like resonate with each other. So like it like vibrates in their chest when they see their mate near or smell their mate. I mean, that's been done to death, that kind of mate thing, hasn't it? The next book that was recommended to me was The Deal by Ellie Kennedy. She writes these sports romance novels, and one of the girls in the book club that I'm in actually really likes these books. She I think her name, I'll put her username so you can like see her on TikTok, because she has a lot of recommendations in that kind of thing if you're looking for sports romance. but yeah, this follows a hockey player named Garrett. He's like on this team, and the girl's name is Hannah, and she's a beautiful singer, which I really enjoyed. I liked that aspect of the story because I thought it was something really different. And I've never read a hockey player. I don't read contemporary romance at all. I'm a very big fantasy reader, so this is very outside of my comfort zone, like reading these kinds of novels. And I'm actually reading Empire of the Vampire right now for J. Kristoff, and I'm just like remembering what solid literature with a very intense plot is about, rather than just like a romance written with no plot, if that makes sense. I actually did read this, though I didn't skim it. Some of these books that I'm going to mention I just like literally skimmed because they were so boring, but this book was actually quite good. It had really good pacing. I felt it was like not boring. I wasn't bored in any aspects. I think there was a lot of tension between the two characters. Will they, won't they? He was falling in love with her, and you could kind of witness that was happening, and it wasn't in like a that stupid thing of like, I can't be with her, oh my god, I think she loves me, like, you know, I can't feel like this. It was like a genuine, like, I feel like I'm falling in love with this person, but she wants someone else. And she was trying to get him to kind of help her release herself sexually, get more confidence, like that kind of thing. And in the process of doing that, she obviously develops feelings for him as well. And I'm not spoiling anything, by the way, because I think that it's pretty fucking obvious that that's what happens. But I genuinely enjoyed The Deal. I thought it was a really interesting book, something different that I haven't read, and I did read the whole lot. I didn't skim it at all. So it shows that it had like quite a good process of like not being boring. The prose wasn't strong, obviously, but the plot kind of ticked along. There were a couple of scenes where I felt like that could be dropped. It was a bit boring, but apart from that, it was fine. The second book I read by her was The Mistake, which is following his friend who is in love with Hannah, but obviously can't have her because she's with Garrett. And he ends up finding another girl, of course, who's just like this I'm not like other girls type that like puts her sneakers on and puts a white top on and a bit of lip gloss and mascara and looks at herself in the mirror and goes, that's the best it's gonna get. You know what I mean? That cliche. So yeah, so we follow that story, and I skimmed this. I was not interested in The Mistake pretty much at all. I was like flicking through it because it's literally the same story. It's like the same thing written again. You know you can predict what's going to happen. You know, you can predict that they're going to end up together or whatever. Although she does stand pretty firm with the mistake that he makes, which I won't reveal what that is. But she's pretty strong in that way. And I think if you like sports romance and you like kind of that protective men kind of vibe that is in college, then you'll like this. But the thing is, like, for me, I found it quite unrealistic because I was like, how old are these people meant to be? Like 20? No one acts like this when they're 20. Like, it's just too young. Like, they're just like men, and I was like, name me a man who's 20. Like, honestly, name me an alpha man who's 20. I'll wait. The next one was a book called Little Bird. So this was like a one sec. This was like a mafia kind of romance where we followed this dude who uses hookers and like owns his own strip club. And he's like a bad guy, you know, tats and stuff. And he meets this girl who, you know, she's so cute and something about her, and he wants to corrupt her. And like, he's like that stupid toxic love that people like. I mean, it's like it's a fantasy, right? Yeah, so he like meets this girl because her brother is involved in some crap at the club that she's like, you won't take my brother, like I won't let you, like how much does he owe you? And so she like tries to make a deal with him to say like, I'm gonna, you know, I'll do whatever you want as long as you let my brother go. And He's like, whatever I want, little bird. Ugh. Anyway, he like visits her at her shop and stuff, and he's super creepy, but it doesn't matter because he's really attractive. I find that, I personally can't get into that. Like, I find that really, really weird. It's not my cup of tea, but I understand that there is an audience out there for that kind of thing. So if you like, I also skimmed this because it was super boring. Like, the pacing was so off. I was so bored. I was like, oh, when's, like, there was no like plot like to keep me interested. Like, same with Den of Vipers. It was just like nothing was happening. It was just like, who's she gonna have sex with next? Like, it was just, there was no overarching like story of like conflict in the background. It was just bleh, you know. But if you like kind of like smutty stuff, then obviously, you know, that's going to be for you. And he's a really attractive guy. He's a bit abusive. Like, I don't really vibe with that either. Not really. Yeah, not really for me. But if you like that kind of like very masculine driven love, then you might like the book. I didn't. The next one that was recommended to me was a BDSM romance called The Confession Duet by an indie author, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. And the reason why is because they did it right. She did it right, sorry. She spoke to a real dominant about what the relationship would be with a submissive and what scenes would be like and blah, blah, blah. And it was not abusive at all. So, you know, with a proper dynamic, from my understanding, I personally am not into this lifestyle or anything, but very curious about how people live their lives because I am a sociologist, so like to investigate. But from my understanding of this is that a proper sub-dom relationship, BDSM driven relationship, is respectful. There's aftercare involved. It's always asking permission. Is this okay? You have your safe words. If you say the safe word, the scene stops, etc., etc. This book did all of that and more. It was actually probably one of the best books out of this list, I would say, that did that right. In saying that, was it written well? Yeah, you know, like, it's just, I mean, it was more focused on the BDSM part of it rather than the plot, but it also wasn't afraid to kind of go into mental health, talking about this traumatic event that happened to her. She was really into rock climbing as well. One of the main character, her name is, what was her name again? Oh, Vivian. Vivian and Corbin are the main characters, and Vivian was like really into rock climbing, so she had this like obsession with doing it, and then Corbin was a military boy, so he was off on tours, and he was quite, you know, a dominant person, but he was very caring and looked after her, very protective, in a very healthy way, and wanted her to feel comfortable, wanted her to feel safe. He just had rules in place of certain things, like, you know, don't break my trust. And she did, and chaos kind of erupts. So I'll let you kind of read that book, but I actually quite enjoyed it because I think that it did it right. And there are a lot of books who don't do it right, and they just make it seem abusive and non-consensual, which I am personally really not comfortable with. Okay, the next two books are by the same author. Do you know I got these from the op shop? How good are they? Oh, actually, no, I didn't. My friend gave me these. Anyway, I always get free clothes or cheap clothes. I only shop at the op shop. This is from a friend, you know, people just throw out clothes. Anyway, books. The next two books I read was from the same author. So the first book in the series, I mean, you can read them as a standalone, but the first one is called Priest. And it's about a priest called Tyler who meets a girl called, what's her name? Poppy, that's right. Poppy, and she's a stripper, and she's like confessing her sins and stuff to Tyler. But Tyler is super curious about it and wants her to describe certain things, because I mean he gets off on it a little bit. And he's also a bit of a naughty boy. He likes to be dominant in the bedroom, likes to tell her what to do, that kind of thing. But it's written really well. If you're religious or you believe in any kind of religious rhetoric, then this is probably going to make you feel very uncomfortable, because it touches on the whole, you know, I'm sinning, I'm a sinner if I do this, I can't do this. So Tyler is very, very conflicted with his feelings, like his personal feelings, and then his relationship with God, that he wants to basically sleep with this girl, but he can't, and he feels really bad. And there's a lot of really deep, conflicting tension that goes on in him, and we do follow it from his perspective. So we witness that along the journey. And it's interesting because I think a lot of romance books normally are written by the perspective of a woman, and there's a dominant man in the background who comes and like either is her hero or rescues her in some capacity, or he's super dominant and like overtakes her and throws her on the bed and, you know, shit like that. But this follows it from his perspective, so we don't really see much of her in the story. So I personally quite enjoyed that, and yeah, it was one of the better smut books that I read because it had a storyline. Like, it wasn't just about the characters' encounters all the time. It was a story, a plot. There was something going on. That's all I'll say about that. The second one, however, was called Sinner, which follows his brother, Sean. Let's put away my pajamas. And Sean is the complete opposite of Tyler. So they both share grief because they have lost a sibling. And so that's mentioned quite a bit in the novel, and it's mentioned in Priest as well, which is quite good because it showed a lot of like there's trauma there, you know, and these boys need to heal. But Sean is bad. He's a bad boy, and he meets a girl named Zenny, who he kind of knew from being a little girl. Like there's an age gap romance, which I have no problem with whatsoever because I married a man who is 13 years older than me. So age gap romances are completely fine in my books. Some people might not like it though. Anyway, he falls in love with Zenny basically, and she's becoming a nun. So there's that aspect of religion there. So he's kind of asks Tyler for advice and all of that. Well, like, what should I do? I'm freaking out, you know, blah, blah, blah. In saying that though, it was not nearly as good as Priest was. And I did find myself skipping through the book because, to be honest, I was a bit bored. It just felt like kind of could predict what was going to happen with this. Like, it wasn't enough conflict to really keep me engaged. Like, I kind of knew that what decision she was going to make, and it did that stupid typical happy ending, you know, the one I'm talking about, that's in a lot of these books, where suddenly he's just the best man ever and asks a certain question, and then they live happily ever after, which just is not real life. So kind of threw me off. I was like, I skimmed to the end and I was like, oh my god, of course. So it was a bit of a letdown, but Priest was good. Okie dokie, I'm back. Not that you knew where I was going. So I got this dress from an op shop as well. How pretty is it? It's like a Sunday church dress, which is very appropriate considering we're talking about Priest and Sinner. Anyway, the next book I read was Flames of Chaos by Amelia Hutchins. Follows Arya and Nox. Arya is a witch and Nox is like this weird hybrid, I don't know, thing, like half beast. He's such an arsehole. I have never had an experience like this in a book before where I have been very disturbed. Children being abused, Arya going through absolute hell. I can't read books like that. I just find them, I just can't. And it's romanticizing abuse, and it disturbs me greatly that this happens, because I was in an abusive relationship 10 years ago, and it's not romantic. It is not romantic. And I know very much that it's like people playing on a fantasy, and they're like, oh, you know, I'll never get in that situation in real life. And it's like, obviously, like, I'd hope not. But the book, you know, the whole point of the book, and books in general, that when people say, oh, this was a problematic book, it's like, well, I mean, isn't that the point? Isn't the point of what she's written supposed to make you feel uncomfortable? Isn't the point of it, like, meant to make you feel disturbed? And I kept that in mind as I read it, because I was like, well, no one would really, like, enjoy this treatment. No one would want to be, you know, made love to at 1 minute, and then the next day made to feel like she was worthless. You know, like, that's not something that someone would want, you know, unless there's some sort of like kink to it, but that's a non-consensual kink as well. It was just how he was. Like, he was abusive. He is abusive, I should say. And it's not something I personally find joy in reading about. But at the same time, I can see why it would be appealing to people. There's also no plot. Like, there's kind of a plot, but it's really just about them, like, fighting each other. And it's that typical thing of, like, it doesn't matter because he's really attractive type thing. Like, oh, he's so hot, but, like, he abuses her. And it's like, it doesn't matter how attractive someone was. If someone abused you, you would think they were, like, feral. You would think they were an absolute creep. They wouldn't be attractive to you anymore because they are abusive towards you. So I don't really understand that part of the book in that, but, like, in the book they are drawn to each other because of certain reasons, of course. And you know, there's really quite disturbing scenes, like when he sleeps with her for the first time. It is her first time as well, and I feel like Emilia does this a lot. Like, she has, like, the virgin trope, but yeah, when they sleep together for the first time, he, like, tells her to leave, and it's really quite painful. Like, he doesn't want her anymore, and he's very emotionally manipulative, and he makes her feel really bad. And then it turns into, like, this wild book where it's like this frenzy between them. It wasn't for me at all. And I see it recommended on TikTok, and, like, people give it 5 stars, like, this book is so spicy and all that. And it's like, it is, but it's also should come with a list of, like, warnings. And there are other books out there that are spicy that aren't abusive or romanticizing abuse. Again, in saying that, I know that was probably the author's intention, to make you feel like that, and I just hope that she was able to sell more books and get a name out there for herself in the chosen genre that she is writing in. Okay, the next one is called Shadowed Heart, and this cover is amazing. However, don't judge a book by its cover. The story, not so amazing. We follow it. I mean, look, it doesn't even matter, to be honest. I can sum up this book in one sentence, and that is, it's Den of Vipers. It's Den of Vipers in a different setting. It's literally her sleeping with different men. She, like, wants different men as well, and they're like, we won't protect you, and then suddenly they will protect her. They hate her, and then suddenly they don't. You know what I mean? Like, it's Den of Vipers. So if you like that, then you'll like that. Reverse harem is not for me. I've read 2, and that's it. I'm not into it. Okay, lucky last, and I've nearly put all my clothes away. What kind of productivity am I doing? Pretty good for someone with manic depression, right? Right? I know. Very proud of myself. The very last book is called A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Mila Vane. It's actually written very well, surprisingly. The pacing was really off in this book though, because I found myself getting very bored and decided to kind of skip ahead. The very in-your-face confidence sexually was like very intense as well in this book. But both characters had their reasons for being the way that they were. She really didn't care about him and he really didn't care about her until like obviously this moment in the book happens. It follows, his name is Madik and her name is Wyvern. Don't, we're just going to call her. We're just going to, you know, in books when you can't understand someone's name or like a place and you're like, blip, it's in blah, that place. And then when you try to read it out loud to someone, you're like, yeah, I'll skip. The sentence makes sense without that word. So I won't say it. Anyway, Madik is like this warrior. And he's like got his own intentions for like wanting to get revenge on like the king and all of this stuff. And then she also has her intentions for getting vengeance on the king as well, like with having an heir to a throne and all of this stuff. It's not a like, she's not a warrior, she's just a normal girl, princess if you will, almost like damsel in distress type thing. And he's a bit of a brute, he's a bit of an idiot, like that burly kind of man, you know, that's just like a bit of a moron really. But it was written pretty well, surprising. I was quite surprised, but the pacing was off. It was so boring. Like in some bits I was like, oh my god, just get on with it, you know, like what's gonna happen, who cares type thing, because I'm like, nothing's happening. It's literally, and you just know, this is the thing with books like this, like you just know what the outcome is going to be. Like you know that they're ultimately going to end up together. So you've already predicted the ending from the start. Whereas like if a book, like say a smut book, right, out of all of these TikTok books that have been recommended to me, say one of them, they didn't end up together. I mean, we would all howl in pain. However, it would be good. The only one where they didn't actually end up together out of this list was the one where like Nox is really abusive to Arya, which is Flames of Chaos. They don't end up together. They actually hate each other. But they're still like having sex. It's so weird. It is such a weird book. But that's the only one where they like don't end up together. All the rest, they're like, you know that they're just going to be together. And I'd love for like there to be some conflict. Like any good book has a structure of like something keeps them apart. You think of Outlander, James Fraser and Claire. They are kept apart through time. They are kept apart by situations. They are kept apart by war. They are kept apart by chaos. They are kept apart by the fact that Jamie is on the run, that he's a prisoner. There's all of these things. Claire is captured, you know, she's taken away. Like all of these things happen, yet they're still together, but there's stuff preventing them from being like the happy ending. So sometimes in these books, the happy ending is like too soon, or it's like, you know that that's ultimately what's going to happen. So boring. Anyway, that concludes this video of books I read via TikTok being recommended to me. What am I saying? TikTok recommended me some books and I read them. And did I enjoy them? I don't know. Some yes, others no. I hope that you got some recommendations out of this. I hope it was entertaining. I hope that I articulated myself well and got my point across. Please don't hate on these authors. Most of these are independent. If you do want to buy their books, please support them via your pennies and leave them a nice review. If you want to, if you like the book, obviously. I don't really write reviews very often. But yeah, have a good day. I am going to keep putting my stuff away, and then I'm going to maybe, I don't know, like I might I might read this book, because I feel like I don't know, I just feel like I haven't read good literature in a long time, and so like this is good, this is amazing because I haven't read good literature in a long time. However, this book is amazing though, so it's about vampires if you can't guess. Alright, see ya, bye.